They say every assassin has an origin story, but none begin quite like this. Before the bullets, before the bloodshed, before her name echoed through the criminal underworld, she was just a young dancer chasing the rhythm of a quiet life. And then, in one violent night, that rhythm was ripped away. What rose from the ashes wasn't a victim. It was a force the underworld was never prepared for. This is the story of Eve Macaro, the ballerina who learned to kill with the same grace she once brought to the stage. The story of Ballerina begins long before the gunfire, long before the neon-lit hallways and brutal showdowns. It begins in a quiet home, where a young girl named Eve Macaro tries to dance her way out of the shadows in her life. Even as a child, she carries a strange mix of elegance and pain in her movements, as if she was born balancing between two worlds, one of grace and one of danger. Her father, a man with secrets hidden behind tired eyes, watches over her with fierce love. He knows the world that waits outside is merciless, and he tries to shield her from it for as long as he can. But in the John Wick universe, safety is always temporary. One night, the quiet rhythm of Eve's childhood is shattered. A dangerous cult, led by a man known only as the Chancellor, descends upon their home. The world erupts into chaos, fire, shattered glass, gunshots slicing through the night. Eve's father fights with the desperation of a man who knows this isn't. It's an execution. He tries to get her out, pushing her through the smoke, urging her to run. Their escape is frantic, desperate, messy. The opposite of the controlled elegance Eve has always admired in ballet. Just when it seems they might make it out, fate strikes hard. Eve's father is killed in front of her. The grief is instant, but bottomless. Burning itself into her memory, it becomes the moment that changes everything. The moment a ballerina is forged into something far more dangerous. After the attack, Eve becomes an orphan in a world she barely understands. That's when Winston Scott, his dad Winston, the calm and calculating manager of the New York Continental, steps in. He takes her into his care, but he knows he can't protect her forever. So he brings her to a place that shaped one of the deadliest assassins the world has ever known. The Ruska Roma. A ballet school on the surface, a lethal training ground beneath it. The director, stern and elegant, takes one look at this fragile girl coated in soot and grief and decides there is something worth refining. Evie's welcomed not with warmth, but with the cold promise of discipline. Her life becomes a cycle of pain and precision. One moment, she's practicing plies and pirouettes. The next, she's learning to disarm grown men twice her size. Bruises become her second skin. Soreness becomes her constant companion. But every cut, every strain, every blistered foot builds her into something new. Eve grows into a dancer who moves like flowing silk, and into an assassin who strikes like a blade. 12 long years pass within the walls of the Ruska Roma, shaping her body into a weapon and her mind into something sharp enough to survive the underworld. Her instructors teach her that dance is discipline. Discipline is survival, and survival is the only currency that matters. By the time she earns the title Kikimora, she is unmistakably deadly. She has given her first mission: protect a young ward from a threat lurking in the shadows. She approaches the mission with the cold precision she was trained for. Every step is calculated, every movement silent, her grace becoming her camouflage. The mission is successful, proving that she is no longer the terrified girl who once ran through flames. She is now the one people run from. But victory doesn't quiet the storm inside her. The memory of a father as death gnaws at her like an old wound that refuses to heal. She has spent years learning how to kill, how to endure pain, how to keep her mind reserved. But she has never learned how to forget. And deep down, she knows she doesn't want to forget. She wants justice, or something closer to vengeance. Her nights become restless. She roams the city streets alone, letting the cold air sting her face, trying to numb the memories. Every shadow, every whisper, every place where danger festers reminds her of the one truth she cannot escape. The people who destroyed her family are still out there, and she has the skills to find them. In this wandering, she crosses paths with the Face. Fans of the Wick universe know well, John Wick himself. Their encounter is brief, quiet, almost respectful. Two assassins, one legendary, one rising, sharing the same darkness. He doesn't need to say much. His presence alone tells her what she already knows. This world never lets go of people like them. Revenge is not just a mission. It's a language, a way of living. And with that silent acknowledgement, Eve's path becomes clear. She is done being a student. She is done waiting. She is done letting the ghosts of her past hover unanswered. She will hunt the men who took everything from her. She will uncover the secrets behind the cult that destroyed her life. And she will step out of the shadows, not as a ballerina practicing in a mirror, not as an orphan running through flames, but as a weapon trained, sharpened, and finally aimed. The stage is set. The audience is the criminal underworld. And Eve Macaro is ready for her first solo. Eve's decision to seek vengeance sets her life on an irreversible path. Once the idea takes hold, it becomes the only thing she can think about, the single thread that pulls her forward. She starts digging into the fragments of her past, searching for clues, hints, old whispers about the man responsible for destroying her family. It's a dangerous curiosity, one that forces her back into the places the Ruska Roma always warned her to avoid. But warnings don't matter anymore. Not to someone who's been waiting 12 years for justice. Her search leads her toward a name she hasn't spoken aloud since childhood. The Chancellor, a man who hides behind ritual, power, and fear. A man whose influence stretches through criminal networks like vines, choking the life out of anything they touch. Tracking him isn't easy. He leaves no trail, unless he wants one found. But Eve is persistent. Each night, she slips into the underbelly of the city, gathering whispers from broken men in dim bars, forgotten informants, and people who owe favors they cannot repay. One of these leads pulls her toward a remote European village Hallstatt. Quiet, beautiful, and eerie in the way places become when they hide something dark beneath their surface. The deeper she digs, the clearer it becomes. This is where the Chancellor built his sanctuary. This is where he took her childhood. And this is where she will end him. But Eve isn't reckless. She knows she can't walk straight into the lion's den without preparation, so she arms herself with the skills she honed for years: stealth, precision, and a dancer's discipline. She studies the terrain, the guards, the patterns of the night patrols. Every movement she makes is calculated, controlled, almost choreographed. She's no longer training for the stage. She's preparing for war. When she arrives in Hallstatt, the cold air bites her skin, reminding her of the night she lost everything. It fuels her resolve. She moves through the streets like a ghost, blending with shadows, her footsteps softer than falling snow. She follows the whispers of cult members and watches their rituals from a distance. It doesn't take long for her to confirm her worst fear. The Chancellor's influence hasn't weakened over the years. It has grown stronger, and he's still taking children, molding them the way he once tried to mold her. Among those he's taken is a young girl named Ella, bright-eyed, terrified, and far too familiar. In Ella, Eve sees herself, alone, frightened, clinging to whatever hope she can find. The sight of the girl shakes Eve more than she expects. She remembers the fear, the desperation, the helplessness she felt the night her childhood was stolen. And suddenly, her mission becomes more than revenge. It becomes rescue redemption. A chance to break the cycle the Chancellor began years ago. Eve infiltrates the cult's hidden compound, slipping through their defenses with the precision of someone who has rehearsed every step. Every guard she disarms is taken down, silently. Every locked door becomes an invitation. She moves with the grace of a dancer, but the effect is deadly. Her strikes land like sharp notes in a violent symphony. Inside the heart of the compound, she finds Ella. The girl's fear melts into awe as she watches this strange, silent woman clear a path for her. Eve kneels, offering her hand, her voice soft for the first time in years. "You're safe," she whispers, a promise she intends to keep, even if it costs her everything. But getting the girl out is only half the battle. The Chancellor knows someone has infiltrated his sanctuary. His followers gather like a swarm, armed and fanatical. Eve, with Ella clinging to her side, has no choice but to fight her way out. What follows is a dance of violence, each move more desperate than the last. Eve uses every technique the Ruska Roma ever drilled into her disarming strikes. Fluid dodges, brutal elegance, all while shielding Ella from bullets and blades. She takes hit after hit but refuses to slow. The girl depends on her. The child she once was demands it. When she finally reaches safety with Ella, bloodied and exhausted, Eve isn't relieved. She's furious. Furious at the Chancellor. Furious at the world that lets men like him thrive. Furious that after all these years, the nightmare still lives. She sends Ella to the only place she knows will protect her, the Ruska Roma. The director's stern expression softens, only barely, when she sees the girl. She understands what this means. Eve has broken their rules, acted alone, risked everything. But the director doesn't scold her. She simply says, "Finish what you started." Wheat, ella sabe, Eve returns to Holstedt alone. This time, she isn't sneaking in. She's storming the place with fire in her veins. She hunts the Chancellor through his own sanctuary, tearing through every defense he built. And when she finally faces him, the man who haunted her life for over a decade, there is no hesitation left in her. The confrontation is violent, brutal, and personal. And in the end, Eve is the one who walks out alive. But victory has its price. The Chancellor's death sends ripples through the criminal underworld. Leaders who once ignored her now whisper her name with a mix of fear and fury. Someone places a bounty on her head, a massive one. And suddenly, Eve Macaro becomes one of the most hunted people in the Wick universe. Yet, as she walks away from the burning remains of the man who destroyed her childhood, she doesn't feel fear. She feels something she hasn't felt since she was a little girl dancing in the quiet safety of her home. She feels free, but in this world, freedom never lasts for long. The morning after the Chancellor's death feels strangely calm. The kind of calm that only exists right before the world realizes something catastrophic has happened. Eve stands at the edge of the burning compound, the flames reflecting in her eyes. This should be the moment she feels closure, the moment she finally lays her ghost to rest. But instead, she feels an eerie stillness, a silence too heavy to trust. The underworld doesn't stay quiet for long. Within hours, word spreads. The Chancellor is gone, eliminated inside his own protected sanctuary. His followers, the ones who survived Eve's assault, scatter like broken pieces across Europe, each carrying a different version of the story, but one detail remains the same. It was Eve Macaro, the ballerina, the girl who escaped years ago, the orphan who grew teeth, and now she's a threat. By the time Eve returns to the city, she's already a marked woman. Assassins with hungry eyes lurk in alleyways. Informants glance at her with panic. Even those who once owed her favors suddenly want distance. A price has been placed on her head, a price high enough to tempt killers from every corner of the underworld. The message is clear. She may have ended her past, but she's ignited a new war. Eve doesn't hide. She never learned how. Instead, she moves through the streets like she owns them. Shoulders steady, eyes forward. She knows who placed the bounty. Not one man, but the network the Chancellor served. A web of powerful figures who refuse to let one of their own be erased without punishment. They want her to live long enough to suffer. She plans to make them regret that. Her first stop is the Continental, not because she expects safety. She knows better, but because she needs answers. Winston meets her in the lobby, that composed and unreadable expression he wears better than any suit. He looks at her with a mix of frustration and admiration. "You've caused quite a disturbance," he says. Eve smirks. "Good." He doesn't ask why she killed the Chancellor. He already knows. What he does tell her is something she never expected. Her vengeance, justified as it was, has shifted the balance of power. The Eye Table, the shadowy authority that rules everything, now sees her as a loose thread, and the table does not tolerate loose threads. Eve wants to leave, but Winston stops her with a single line. "You can run, Eve, but you can't outrun the world you were raised in." Her jaw tightens. She isn't running. She's moving forward. She spends the next days avoiding trap after trap. Assassins on rooftops, ambushes in abandoned warehouses, poisoned invitations disguised as peace offerings. Every encounter pushes her closer to the truth. She isn't just a target. She's a symbol now. A warning. Someone who broke the rules and survived, and symbols are dangerous. One night, while moving through the city rooftops, she meets him again. John Wick. He doesn't greet her with words. There's no need. He understands her situation better than anyone alive. Both of them are caught in the endless machinery of revenge, punishment, and survival. He walks beside her for a moment, looking out over the city lights. "You made your choice," he finally says. "So did you," she replies. There is no judgment between them, only recognition. John tells her what she already suspects. The only way to stop the hunt is to take out the ones who ordered it. Not foot soldiers, not bounty hunters, but the decision makers, the ones hiding behind money, rituals, and false power. It's suicide, but Eve has never been more alive. With renewed determination, she tracks the leaders of the Chancellor's network one by one. The hunt becomes a violent ballet, every confrontation brutal, every escape narrow, every victory carved out of pure will. She leaves a trail behind her, not of bodies, but of fear. Fear that one lone assassin, one Ballerina, is dismantling an entire structure of power brick by brick. When she finally reaches the last of them, a man who believed himself untouchable, Eve confronts him in a heavily guarded estate. The fight is messy, frantic, nothing like the elegant choreography she trained for. It's personal. It's raw. It is the final piece of a story she has been trying to finish for 12 years. In the end, she stands over him, breathing hard, bruised and bloodied, but unbroken. "This is for everything," she says softly. And with that, the final thread is cut. The bounty collapses. The hunt stops. The underworld falls silent. But Eve knows better than to trust silence. When she returns to the Ruska Roma, the director studies her from across the room. There's no lecture, no scolding, only a small nod. The closest thing to praise the director ever gives. The girl she once molded into a weapon has now become something even she could not control. Eve visits Ella one last time. The girl runs to her arms, tight around her waist. Evie promises she'll always be safe. She doesn't promise she'll stay. She can't. Her path is no longer tied to one place. As Eve walks away, the shadows seem to move aside for her. Not because she's feared, but because she's earned her space in them. She isn't just a ballerina. She isn't just an assassin. She isn't just the girl who survived. She is Eve Macaro, the woman who rewrote her fate with blood, grace, and fire. And somewhere in the vast, dangerous world she now walks freely through. A new story is waiting for her. The legend has only begun.